One of the first things that we are taught as children is to be nice or to be kind. In fact, I'm sure most everyone here at some point learned that phrase, if you can't say anything nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. Unless, of course, you watch the movie Steel Magnolias, where one of the gals in there at one time says, if you can't say anything nice about someone, come on over and sit next to me. You know, we maybe know someone, or maybe have been in that position ourselves sometimes, where we've been tempted to add to the negativity of another person, where if someone is saying something positive about someone, we might think to ourselves, oh yeah, but if you only knew what I know about them. Or if someone for some reason is speaking negatively of someone, we might want to do that kind of one-upsmanship and say, well, you know what I heard, or you know what I know. It can be one of those things that can be difficult for us to do, to always hold someone in that positive light. We see that very much in our gospel today. The gospel story is often referred to as the woman caught in adultery. But if we really were to see it through the eyes of Jesus Christ, we would instead see it as the woman not condemned. It's a familiar parable to us where Jesus comes down from the Mount of Olives and he is teaching the people. And of course, along come the scribes and the Pharisees. And for some reason, the scribes and Pharisees saw it as their duty not only just to keep the law, but to really point out any time someone had broken that law. And they did so in a very harsh way. And so as Jesus is teaching to the crowds, you know, Jesus' message was always one of love and forgiveness and mercy and building up the other person, and that's why crowds came around. But the Pharisees bring a woman, and it says they stand her right in the middle, and they say, Jesus, this woman was caught in adultery, and according to the law of Moses, she must be stoned. Now, it's good that they bring up the name of Moses. It's kind of like when you watch TV shows where they have a court trial and someone brings something up and they say, objection. Well, they brought it up first. So Jesus, in knowing that they have brought up the law of Moses first, tests to see how much the Pharisees actually know what that law of Moses was. And of course, they're talking about the 10 Commandments, where Moses, goes up the mountain and God writes with his finger on stone. Now, usually human beings wrote with a quill and parchment paper, but to know that it was written by God, or that it's the words of a God, it's written with the finger. So the very finger of God can etch those 10 Commandments into stone. Moses then takes them down to the people where they've become impatient and have made this molten calf and are worshiping that. And so Moses chastises them for breaking that covenant with God, and he breaks those 10 Commandments. Well, now he needs to go back up the mountain where he has a conversation with God. But God doesn't condemn the people. God instead says, I am a God who is slow to anger. I am rich in kindness, rich in forgiveness. Takes his finger and rewrites the law. And Moses goes down, giving those people another chance to stay true to the covenant. So that's what Jesus has in mind when he addresses the scribes and Pharisees. Because the first thing he does is he bends down, takes his finger, writes as God in the earth. And then he stands up and he says, let you who are without sin throw that first stone. And he bends down again and begins to write, giving them a chance to kind of put that mirror in front of them to look at, are they keeping that covenant of knowing that God is all loving and merciful? And it says one by one they walk away. And Jesus, who was the only one who really could have thrown a stone because he was the only one without sin, doesn't. Instead he says, has no one condemned you? Then I don't either. Go, but don't sin again. And friends, the invitation for us as we listen to this is to look at our own way of interacting with others, because sometimes sin sticks. We might look at someone who has really turned their life around, and yet we say, they're doing so well for a former drug addict, or we know that they have done some jail time, or they've made some mistake in life. And even though we are trying to give them that second chance, we still see them in that old light. But again, we are called to be those people who say, do we say negative things about others or think those negative things, or do we always say and think the positive? Are we people who hold others in the prison of their past sins or mistakes? Or like God, do we really give them that next chance? Do we see this as the story of the woman caught in adultery? Or do we see it as the story of the woman not condemned?